Audio Jungle.
My name is Gillian Collins. I'm a commandant in the Irish Defence Forces, and I'm really delighted to be here today among many inspiring women. And to be honest, I want to leave here and become an engineer or study computer science straight away, to be honest. I'm going to talk to you today about a career in the Defence Forces, some STEM-focused, but the wider Defence Forces itself, and to give you an idea of the opportunities that are available to you to join an organisation such as my own. We'll talk a bit about, first off, the perceptions of the organisation, what comes to mind when you think of with the military. We'll talk about why you should choose a career in the Defence Forces. And I suppose I'll focus specifically on my own case in point. And then we look at the various different career opportunities available within the organisation to include STEM-focused specialities, but also the wider areas that are within the organisation. So what comes to mind, maybe for those of you who might not have a family member, might not be acquainted with the organisation, certain things come to mind maybe when you're not aware of what type of an organisation we are. The first thing you might think of is, we're all Rambo. We're all war-trained, we're the war machine, we're ready to go. Second, you might think of these impossible physical standards that you couldn't possibly achieve. You know, I'm a girl, I couldn't possibly lift a log that's really heavy. Okay, there's a little bit of that, but that's not what it's completely about within the organisation. And you're trained to develop that, and you're trained to develop certain skills, but physical being one of them. And another idea is effectively men with guns, men with big guns. That's kind of what you think about. That couldn't possibly be me. Again, there's a little bit of that, but that's not all of what the organisation is about. I'm just going to show you a little video clip, and I want to kind of reframe your perception of maybe what you think of the organisation and maybe where you could see yourself within the organisation. This is a little video we designed for International Women's Day last year, and I just want to play it to give you a concept, as I said, of where you might fit into my organisation. So yes, we've been a traditionally male-dominated organisation. Currently, there are 6.7% women within the organisation. We're small in terms of numbers, but we're most definitely making our impact be felt within the organisation. And I suppose you can now see maybe where you might fit into the organisation. There are various different roles for you within the organisation, and there are many different ways for you to join. You can join at various different levels. There are various different requirements. I won't go into the details of that today because I have a short amount of time, but all that information is available on military.ie. But why then would you consider a career in the Defence Forces? For me personally, I joined the Defence Forces in 2003. I was always drawn to the organisation for some reason. I never really knew why. I liked being active. I liked playing sport. I loved the idea of working as part of a team. And I loved the idea of travelling. And since I've joined the Defence Forces, this is my 17th year within the organisation, and I have not been in the same job for that entire time, for that 17 years. I've filled so many different roles within the organisation, and I've filled so many different appointments, both home and overseas. And that has given me a very varied career and a very varied career path throughout my whole career. There's a consistent room for personal development within the organisation, and I have very much developed as a person within my career and along my career path. I have been, on a course learning how to drive tanks. and I've been working in the Defence Forces Human Resources branch for a company of over 9,500 personnel. I've been a unit commander within a CAV troop here in Cork, actually, or I've been a platoon commander overseas. There are so many different opportunities available to you within the organisation. Also, there's a chance to make a difference. You might not think that at first glance. Very much this applies to, I suppose, my deployments overseas. And one thing that I have developed since my very first trip overseas, and as it was just mentioned, is the impact of conflict and the impact that conflict has on women in particular. And it's something I've very much been struck by within my career in the Defence Forces, and something I have developed, and a passion that I have developed, and I have tried to foster throughout my career. Just to give you an example of that varied lifestyle, my first overseas trip took me to the continent of Africa, Western Africa, to a country called Liberia along the coast. I was a platoon commander, and essentially my role was a platoon commander in charge of 31 people, all men clearly, and we had to patrol the jungles of Liberia, basically to reinforce or enforce the peace process that was in place at the time between rebel factions and between the government. I remained on the continent of Africa then for my second deployment, and I went to Chad in Central Africa, where I was a CIMIC officer, so a civil and military liaison officer. It's effectively the link between the military element that's there and all the different actors outside. So this here is the governor of the area of Dar Silla, and I was the link as an interpreter, as I spoke French, between him and between the military in place. Also, this is really where I began to foster, as I said, the passion I have for engaging with women overseas. We were very much working on a day-to-day basis with refugees who had fled their country from violence in Sudan and were living in Chad, in the area we were deployed, within refugee camps with their families. And it's very much striking that from engaging with these women, they're not very much different from ourselves. But the one thing that is different is the opportunities and the rights available to these women are not the same as what we enjoy here in Ireland. And it's something to very much be grateful for. Moving on then, I was deployed to the colder climate of Eastern Europe, to Kosovo, where I worked as a logistics officer in Pristina, the capital. So I was in charge of all the real-life services of a camp, accommodation, dining facilities, engineer works within the camp, and camp facilities themselves. And I don't look particularly happy there in the boat, but I was at the time. And that was a very interesting experience, and remained within Eastern Europe for my next deployment to Bosnia. I deployed with a very small mission in Bosnia in a headquarters again, where I was a personnel officer. And last, I'm just recently back from a deployment in Lebanon, where Irish troops are currently deployed to monitor cessation of hostilities along the Blue Line, so the border or demarcation line between Israel and Lebanon. That's where our troops are. And again, I wanted to refocus my commitment, I suppose, to the women in these conflict zones, and we ran a number of medical workshops and medical training for local women in community centres local to our bases, to engage with women and try and improve their lives. And as I said, it's a passion that I have and have done and developed over my deployments. So how can you join the Army? Well, effectively, you can join the Army, you can join the Naval Service, or you can join the Air Corps. And indeed, both the Naval Service and the Army have RDF elements. So it's a way for you to, I suppose, test the waters. If it's something you might be interested in, you can join it part-time and then see if it's something you would like as a career in the Defence Forces. I'll move through specifically the different areas that you can join within the organisation. I'll focus more on the STEM, but I'll talk just about the wider areas themselves. So first of all, you can join the Infantry Corps. The Infantry Corps is effectively the foot soldiers or the ground soldiers within the armed forces who are ready to be deployed at all times. We have the artillery, which are effectively the big guns, and they're way back in the distance, and they provide fire support to those infantry troops or to mounted troops in cavalry. Cavalry, which is my own area, it's basically armoured cars, so we're responsible for reconnaissance. So in Liberia, for example, we would travel ahead of the troops, we would recce the route and make sure it was secure and safe for the troops coming behind us, and we would provide fire support with the large weapon systems that you see mounted on the vehicles. We have the military police, who are responsible for discipline within the organisation. All the varying roles you can see that you can enter in within our organisation and what they offer. We have transport, responsible for procuring purchasing, maintaining all soft-skin fleets, all normal vehicles, and for getting those vehicles overseas. Finally, the medical corps, responsible for all medical responsibilities, both overseas and at home. So you can see the wide array of opportunities available to you. There are specialists, there are physical training instructors, there are chefs, there are equestrian riders, equestrian grooms, and indeed you could be part of the army band. From a STEM-specific focus, the careers that you could develop yourself within the organisation focus on the Communications Information Service Corps, for example, which provides all communications and information transmission throughout the organisation up through the chain of command. So here you can see a girl in a base camp in Liberia attempting to send back our report from our patrol that day, which was conducted within the jungle, miles and miles from our base. We have the Engineer Corps, providing engineer support to the Irish Defence Forces, both at home and overseas, a very interesting route that you could travel down within the Defence Forces in Ireland. This is one example I picked. This is Captain Jane O'Neill. So Jane studied civil engineering in Trinity. She went on to do a master's in project management and structural engineering. She is based in the Air Corps in Baldonnel currently, and currently her role in Baldonnel is to maintain the military airfield and to provide firefighting services and crash services for immediate first responders in the event of an accident in Baldonnel. She also travelled overseas to Undoff, where she was responsible for constructing a military camp from scratch. So you can imagine all that comes with that, the construction of accommodation, toilet facilities, dining facilities, water sanitation, every element that goes with the construction and implementation of a military camp overseas. The engineers are responsible for putting that in place. She would have also been responsible for mine clearance, clearing routes, as you can see here where an individual is lying down, clearing routes for the troops to pass to make sure they're safe from any mines that would be buried underground. At home, if we're on an exercise, you know, if the troops need to cross that river and there is no bridge, the engineers come along, build that bridge, and off we go. So they're responsible for mobility, counter-mobility, and sustaining our troops in place at all times. Also, another really exciting element, for those of you who are interested in the sciences, is the Ordnance Corps. And the key role for the Ordnance Corps is explosive ordnance disposal. So you can see many call-outs on the radio. We work with our partners on Garda Síochána, a very specific and a great role to get involved in within the organisation. Last but not least, I just want to mention, and I suppose when I joined the Army, it wasn't really a consideration for me because you're young and you want to get going. But the organisation is very much progressing, and that's the role that I'm carrying out at the moment as the Gender Equality and Diversity Advisor for the organisation. I'm responsible for implementing strategy and policy with a view to making a career in the Defence Forces that bit more family friendly, and basically for protecting our people and ensuring it is a more enjoyable and a good place to work. And it's an organisation that is definitely moving with the times and definitely a great place, and I have enjoyed every moment of my career. If there is any questions or queries with relation to requirements for how you would join the Army, www.military.ie will have everything that you need. If I could leave you with one parting thought, it would be to always support and mentor and make things better for your fellow women who are coming behind you. And we can all achieve as individuals, but as group, and if you come together as women, we can achieve an awful lot more. Thank you very much for your attention.